We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to begin with prayer, and then we're going to jump in the book of Genesis, and we're going to look at the life of Joseph in regards to our discussion on last week of salt and light. Father, we thank you for your loving kindness. And we just ask that you just continue to lead and guide us, to give us the necessary insight and wisdom that comes from you and your word. We began a short discussion on salt and light last week, and as we continue, help us with the example that is going to be provided on this evening. We love you and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. First thing I want to do is we're going to start off by looking at these first 6 verses of Genesis chapter 39. And I want to first just look at the favor of God that's on the life of Joseph. It says this: now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him. And he made him overseer over his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in his house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. And there's another part to that verse, and I'm going to wait and I'll read that as we move on. You know the story of Joseph, and for those that may not know it or haven't read it in a while, Joseph had 2 dreams back to back that caused his brothers to start getting jealous of him. He would often give a report of what his brothers were doing out in the field, and his father told him one day, go check on your brothers and see how things are going. And he went looking for him. He couldn't find them, so he saw a man, and he asked him, have you seen my brothers? And his brothers were in another area, probably like another city or town or something. And when he found them, they saw him from a distance, and they were basically like, look at this dreamer coming along. And they were upset with him. And so, long story short, they devised this plan to have him killed. But one of his brothers wanted to deliver him out of their hand. And so he kind of talked them out of what they originally planned to do to him. Long story short, he ends up getting sold to this group here that eventually brought him down. And this is the Ishmaelites that eventually brought him down to Egypt. And he was sold into the household or into Potiphar's house. But there are several things that began to take place. You remember when we talked about being salt and light? What were we looking at? Salt, how it impacts, how it does what? It destroys. It flavors. What else? We said flavoring, but you used a really good word. You said it enhances, preserves, and what else? It heals. We look at those 4 things, and we saw how impactful salt can be, but we talked about what happens when it loses its saltiness. And then we looked at light, It brings illumination. It brings clarity. All of those different things. It could be a warning sign for danger ahead, right? We use the example of the lighthouse. It could be an attraction, like a person walking in the midst of the forest and they see this light through the fog coming through a window of somebody's cabin, right? It's an attraction. It draws people in. It allows them to see the things that they were previously stumbling over. But we're going to look at light and salt in the midst of Joseph's life. And I'm using this as an example because we see right here at the beginning, God's hand was on him. We just discussed what he went through, right? God's hand was in his life, even though his brothers had did him wrong, threw him in a pit, left him for dead, and then eventually say, look, let's just sell him, and then we'll just go back and say something happened to him. And so he sold to the Ishmaelites, and then now he's, in a sense, sold as a servant, as a slave to Potiphar. It says in verse 2, the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, and his master recognized. Remember, we talked about light was what? What was the one thing we said light is? What did we say? It's visible. It's visible. It's supposed to be seen. You remember, I don't remember which commentary it was that we read, but we talked about how as Christians, we're supposed to be visible. We're not supposed to shrink back and hide or anything like that. We're supposed to be out in public, right? We're supposed to be visible to the rest of the world. You cannot provide light somewhere and provide truth to correct all of the injustices and the falsehoods and all of that stuff unless you're visible. But I want you to notice something. It says that his master noticed that the Lord had put everything in his hands, and anything that was in Joseph's hand, it succeeded. So Potiphar is like, I'm noticing what's going on. And so he's going to put Joseph in charge of everything. And what does the text say? That everything that was in Joseph's hand, it prospered. He didn't have to worry about anything. And he put Joseph in charge so that Joseph didn't even have to worry about anything except for, right, the food he ate. Now, here's the key. We see that God's hand is over him, right? And God is causing things to succeed in his life. As salt and light, that's what happened. Junior, me and you've had this conversation multiple times recently, and just talking with people in general, we understand as children of the Most High, we're what? We're not alone. No matter what our circumstances or situations are, we're not alone. So that even in the midst of this situation that is harsh in the moment, God gives him favor, right? For you and I to have the ability to be salt and light just in general, God has to give us that. Give us the ability to impact in that way, right? And so I want you to notice something. So he's in charge now, but we're about to witness Potiphar's wife bearing false witness on Joseph. And so in a sense, you can say that the heat is going to be turned up. So let's just keep reading. I'm going to read that last part of verse 6, and I'm going to just keep reading on down. It's down to verse 20. It says, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, because my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge, he is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it says, verse 10, and as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her. to lie beside her or to be with her. You want to talk about exposing darkness in the midst of wherever you are. This woman coming after him, and he's like one of the things is when I was reading this, I was noticing. Just think about it. He ran a list down on her, right? My master don't have to worry about anything, which is your husband. He put me over everything. When it comes to this house and everything that's in his care, nobody's over me when it comes to this. The only thing that he's kept from me is you. But notice another thing he said, because he understands some things. He said, how can I do this wicked thing and sin against who? Against God. See, salt and light understand that, right? For us to be impactful, we have to understand that what we do, right, when we're not being who we were purposed to be, it's against God ultimately. And it says, day after day, she kept testing him. And he said, nope, I'm not even trying to hear it. See, we get this example, right? There's some things that go wrong just in his life as a young man, just in general, where he has all of these problems against his brother and his brothers. And some will argue that he was boasting in front of his brothers about this dream and even boasting in front of his parents and all of that. And yeah, maybe he should have kept some stuff to himself. But he's going through all of these things. God is with him even when he gets to this next stage in life. And guess what? He's still able to stand strong in the midst of opposition. Because this is opposition whether we know it or not. Opposition has to do with something that's trying to deter you from whatever it is that you want. His path is honoring God because God is with him in the midst of what he has going on. But let's keep on looking at some of this. But in verse 11 it says, but one day when he went into the house to do his work and none of the men in the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment saying, lie with me. But he left the garment in his hand and fled and got out of the house. We're going to see how darkness operates. People that are walking in darkness. She waited to the opportune time when nobody else was in the house, that if he made a fuss about it, they would be like, what's going on in there? But because nobody else is in there, and now he done took off and left his garment and fled, he didn't even have time he wasn't worried about that. He was trying to get out of there. What happens now? Now when she goes and complains to the other people that would normally be in the house, what? It's her word against his. Right? And no matter how good he's been doing, this one thing that's been kept from you, she's claiming that you went after that. Right? And they're using this thing with the Hebrew that you brought in. He came in here to disgrace me. Right? That ain't the exact language she's using, but she's bringing the fact that this Hebrew you done brought into our household, and look at what he's doing. And so the master gets mad, and you know the story. That's why I'm not reading everything. But the master got mad, and what does he do to Joseph? Threw him in prison. So let's skip down to verse 21, and I want you to see how we're gonna witness the favor of God again. Right? Trouble in life between him and his brothers. He sold, and he sold over again. Now somebody bears false witness. Remember, as children of God, as salt and light, that does not mean that you and I will never go through anything. As we stand on his standard of truth, on how we ought to operate no matter where we are, because even though God's favor was with him, we know that Joseph had to have some level of character that stood out as well versus everybody else that was there as workers. He had to have some level of character I don't believe that it was just the favor of God. The favor of God thrusts you further, right, than anything else can. But I believe he had to have some kind of integrity and some kind of character. And we saw it when he denied her day after day after day after day. Now he's going to be thrown into prison, but the favor of God is on him. Let's look at verses 21 through 23. It says, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all of the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge. That sounds familiar, right? Because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. Think about that. The Lord made it succeed. Again, everything is placed in Joseph's care. Everything. Everything is in his care. The keeper of the prison didn't have to worry about the other prisoners. Nothing happening to one of the prisoners. Them not being fed or whatever it is however they take care of the prisoners. They didn't have to worry about anything. The whole prison is in Joseph's care, and things are probably running smoother than they've ever run before. See, part of the favor of God may be God giving you wisdom, right? A set of life skills to be able to run things in a way that's just like, wow. I hadn't got a call. Well, it's not the 21st century. Well, I hadn't gotten word that something has gone wrong or something has happened to anybody in the prison since Joseph's been here. Let's give him some more authority and give him some more responsibility around here until they got to the point to probably where it's just like, man, let's just let him handle everything. I don't have to even worry about nothing. That made not only him as the keeper of the prison, his job easier, but it probably gave him more time to sit back and just chill. And whatever he did, it said it succeeded. Right? Salt. Enhancing. Wherever it is that you're sprinkling it, it's doing something. It's impacting. It's changing things for the better. Right? It's amazing that when you read stories and examples like the life of Joseph, you begin to see like, man, I'm complaining about my situation. I'm complaining, and we see somebody else who's had it harder and still lives a life of integrity, strong character, and God honoring in all of their decisions. Think about that. It didn't say that God's favor was on him and he got out. It didn't say that Potiphar said, you know what? God is on you so strong that, you know what? You don't even have to be here no more. Just give him a field and some land of his own and just send him over there. No, it didn't say that. It says he did good. God gave him so much favor. Everything was put in his care. Then he was lied on. Then he was cast into prison. Then in prison, he's showing the same integrity and the character and the wisdom and all of these different things. Being salt and light out in the world does not say that you won't go through persecution and that you won't be lied on and all these things will not happen to you and to me. But we ought to continue to be effective, enhancing every environment that we go in. People in the environment ought to be like, wow. They ought to take notice. So remember at the beginning I said that Joseph had two dreams, right? He had those two dreams. Now, going into chapter 40, we're going to see the first set of another two dreams. It's going to be the dream of the cupbearer and the baker. So listen to this. Just start reading through chapter 40. It says, sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. Right? So Pharaoh. And Pharaoh was angry at his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, and in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in his custody, right? So some time has passed. These two individuals, they offended the king in some kind of way. We don't get a lot of details on that, but it was enough. And really, in times like that, small things can offend the king and they could be thrown in prison. So we don't know how severe it was or whatever it was, but they're placed, notice, in Joseph's care. Watch over them right there. And he begins to attend to them while they are in the prison. So verse 5 tells us, and one night they both dreamed. The cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt were confined in the prisons. Each had his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. I'm not going to read through all of that, but in a nutshell, it's showing that in a few days, they were going to go back before the king. One of them was going to be restored to his previous position, and the other one was going to be executed. Right? When this happened, right, the guy who is the cupbearer, when he's restored, like Joseph told him, and then the other guy's dead, Joseph told him, what? When you restored, remember me. Remember, I'm the one that interprets your dream. When you and the baker came to me and y'all were distraught and losing y'all mind because of what y'all saw in this dream and didn't know exactly what it meant, remember, I'm the one that told you exactly what was going to happen, and now that it happened, remember me. He told the other guy the same thing. Please do me in the kindness. Verse 14, only remember me when it's well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. Right, so he goes into detail about him being stolen and thrown in a pit and all of that. Right, so things begin to happen. Let's pick up at verse 20. On the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants, and he left up the head of the chief cupbearer and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot about him. What does that immediately tell you? This guy is restored just like he said you would be, and now you done forgot about him. So now Joseph is staying longer in a place he really shouldn't even be in the first place. Longer. But here's the thing. Though he's staying in the place longer and this guy done forgot about him, because we're going to see here in a minute in chapter 41, it's going to be 2 years later that Pharaoh is getting ready to have a dream. So again, salt, light, impactful. He didn't have to interpret their dreams, right? Because he makes it known that I'm not the one that can do this. God is the one that interprets dreams. Right? He's saying it ain't me, it's going to be God the one that gives the interpretation. He's saying that you already know God is with me, but you finna really see it. Right? That's our job as salt and light. We point people. Remember, matter of fact, I'm going to go there right now. Remember the final verse in Matthew 5:16. It says, In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and do what? And give glory to your Father who is in heaven. That's the purpose. It ain't about us. Joseph understood that. The interpretation of dreams come from the Father. You need to understand that. But guess what? Remember me. And he forgot about it. Now, Joseph had two dreams. Two dreams just happened while he was in prison. Now the king is going to have two dreams. I'm not going to do no prophesying two and two. And I ain't going to do all that. I'm just noticing that there are two dreams on each one of these occasions. That's all I'm saying about that. Some people will watch this video, ooh, that's another set of twos. I just tell people to calm down. So starting in chapter 41, we're not even going to take the time to read all of that. But we'll read a little bit of it and then we'll just talk about it. After 2 years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and behold, there came out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after that and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, thin cows ate up the 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called all the magicians of Egypt and its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Now, this is an opportunity for God to show up, right? You know the story of Gideon, right? God wouldn't go out and take care of business until they did what? Yeah, well, hey, that's too many. It's too many soldiers. You want me to go and do this stuff for y'all and so everybody can see? It's too many. Got rid of some. No, it's still too many. All right? Here, this is an opportunity for God to show up. Pharaoh went and called everybody, all of the magicians, workers of whatever kind of arts they work in, and he calls his wise men, probably astrologers and whoever else. Called these individuals, and nobody could interpret the dream. This was a time for not only for God to show up, but that those, right, who follow him or his children, for them to be recognized too. What happens? Who remembers the story? The cupbearer that got restored not too long ago, he go to Pharaoh. He said, "You remember when I had messed up? You remember when I had messed up and you had threw me into prison? There was a guy there, this Hebrew, who told me what was going to happen to me, and he told the chief baker what was going to happen to him. And guess what? Exactly what he said was going to happen to me, I was going to be restored. It happened, and exactly what he said was going to happen to the baker, it happened. You hung him." He said he interpreted both of our dreams. And Pharaoh is like, what? Bring him. And so when he interprets these dreams, again, he's like, God is the one that interprets the dream. But when he interprets the dreams, he said both of them pretty much are the exact same thing. God is saying it's for certain. It's like it doubled up. He told you the exact same thing, but in a different way. And he's saying that God's saying it is for certain. Long story short, Pharaoh puts him in charge. You know, he's like, hey, you ought to do this, and do this. And Pharaoh's like, but don't nobody have that wisdom, and, you know, it's obvious God is with you. He's like, no, you're going to be the one to do it. Everybody listen to what Joseph said. And then we know the story. Joseph, second in command now. He's already getting them to gather, right? 7 years of what? Yeah.
Harvest.
Good harvest, plentiful, right? Everything. Gather as much as you can, put it up, store it up for when the 7 years of drought come. When that famine hit, we still gonna have plenty. But when you read through all of that, you recognize also something else. They're not just blessing like people right there in the little part of the kingdom. They blessing everybody all over. There are going to be people coming from all over to the kingdom to be able to get something. And we know eventually his family is going to come. His brothers, them are going to come. And see, salt and light that's why it's important. We're going to go to 53 here in just a minute, Junior. We'll go to chapter 53 here in a minute. But it's important for us to pay attention to examples. I'm sorry, I said 53. I meant 43, I'm sorry. It's important for us to pay attention to these examples, because when we look at the life of Joseph and everything that he's been through, he's constantly going through things, and finally God is elevating him. I mean, even in the midst of the dark places that he was in, he was being elevated at that time, right? The favor of God was on him. And so we have to look at, no matter where our situations are, what they are, we have to continue to be impactful, right? Salt and light. We have to begin to shine light on the darkness that's in there. And we have to hold a standard that honors God. And we have to be willing to let God work through us like we see God working through him here. And he works through him not only with wisdom, but also the interpretation of dreams that benefited the people. And ultimately got him to be a blessing to his brothers who would come. Right? Verse 1 and 43 says, now the famine was severe in the land. And when they had eaten the grain that had been brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go buy us a little food. But Judah said, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. What's going on there? Yeah. Bring him. Right? And so ultimately, his brothers come back.
Yeah, because he had saw the first time.
Yeah. But he want to see Benjamin. Right? They come back in 44. That's where he's testing his brothers and all of this. Then when you get to chapter 45, you begin to see that he's providing for his brothers and his family, eventually getting them to move there. And they have their own plot of land in Egypt. Chapter 47, starting at verse 1. So Joseph went in and told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers with their flocks and herds and all they possess have come from the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen. And from among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, as our fathers were. They said to Pharaoh, we have come to sojourn in the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks. For the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. And now please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land, Let them settle in the land of Goshen, and if you know any able men among them, put them in charge of my livestock. Give them the best of the land. Let them settle in the best of the land. They want Goshen, let them go settle there. And just see how God is working things out, right? Still has favor. Verse 13, still in chapter 47. Verse 13, Junior. Now there was no food in all the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all of the money that was found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain that they had bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money was all spent in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan, and all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone. And Joseph began to, he started to deal with it, right? Exchange your livestock and all of these different things. So he's still working things out as you know, stuff is continuing to be scarce. So he's using the wisdom that he has to continue to handle things well. And then, all right, here it is, chapter 50. Let's just start at verse 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. So they sent a message to Joseph saying, your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgressions of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. And now, please forgive the transgressions of your servants of the God of your father. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but what does it say? But God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. You meant some stuff bad to happen, and God used. See, when you get scriptures like all things work out to the good of those, right, who love God and according to his purposes, we read that and we think all kind of things, but this is a perfect picture of what that really looks like. You meant evil to happen to me, but God has something else in mind. And he used your selfishness, your jealousy. He used all of that stuff that you had built up inside of you to allow me to go through some things that one day when this severe famine would hit, we would be able to take care of everybody in the land. I want to leave you with this thought. What do you think would have happened in all the land if God had never placed Joseph in that position of authority? Think about when it's time for other people to come get some food and the people that really got everything, how they act. Overcharging. We saw it during the pandemic. People were price gouging, overcharging people for everything, right? Going and purchasing everything and then make you buy toilet paper from them. Toilet paper and water. If you had toilet paper and water, you was rich during the pandemic. But just think about that. God allowed him to be thrown in the pit, then sold to the Ishmaelites, then sold into slavery, and then thrown into prison, then stay an extra 2 years in prison because the guy forgot about him, and then eventually he was let out, placed in charge of everything. And you know that the wisdom of God and his character played an important role in him making sure everybody was taken well care of. Not only did that make the father look good, but it made Pharaoh look good, right? You just think about it. Pharaoh, man, when this famine is over with, Pharaoh, you took care of us during that famine, And like, you know, people were probably blessing the name of Pharaoh through all the land. You made sure we was taken care of. Now they know that he put Joseph in charge of everything, but that's still, Joseph is under him. Made him look good. And then you get to that critical turning point to where it says Pharaoh died out. And what is that? What did Pharaoh dying out mean for the children of Israel in the book of Exodus? Joseph. I don't know nothing about Joseph. Matter of fact, we're going to make it harder on y'all for even bringing up Joseph. Bring up Joseph again. But we got to think about it. Salt and light, no matter our circumstances, no matter our situations, continue to be impactful and allow God to operate in our lives, co-working with God no matter where we are. He didn't say, only when it's good you co-work with me, but when you're going through it, you need to just feel bad for yourself. It's not what he says. We continue to trust God no matter where it is, even in the valley. And as always, we'll leave a blessing with you. Grace, mercy, and peace be with you.